Yeah, so the food in America is absolute poison. Since we've been in Greece, since we've been in Europe in general, we have felt our health completely turn around in a positive way. And I want to take you guys to my old neighborhood here in Piraeus because they have the weekly bazaar going on right now. And I want to show you what real food looks like. I want to show you that even in a quote-unquote poor country, they eat better, have more access, better access to cleaner, safer foods than you do in America. Because the food here, especially the produce, is incredibly fresh. And I mean, it's picked when it's closer to being ripe, right? And it doesn't have to be picked early so it can survive traveling thousands of miles before it actually gets to the grocery store. So it's usually from the country or from the region. And keep in mind that when you see the prices, that's per kilo. And the kilo is 2.2 pounds per kilo. So basically whatever price you see, split that in half. Now, the thing about this bazaar, it's not like farmers markets in the United States. This actually goes for hundreds of yards. And it has pretty much everything that you could possibly want. But like I said, a lot of the things are going to be seasonal. But the people here adjust to that. And that's a much healthier way to live. These are apricots. And I'll say, since I was a kid, I've not had an apricot that was actually good in the States. And like I said, it's just because we don't pick things when they're close to being ripe anymore. So you actually have to go to a farm, or you have to get incredibly lucky, but generally, they're just not very good. Foods here, they taste good. You take a bite, you don't feel sick because your body's not working 24 hours a day, you know, just to try to weather the chemical storm from all the chemicals that have been dumped on your food. You know, this is what it's supposed to be. And this is what it was. This is what it was before we let the grocery stores monopolize our entire food system and control the prices. Yeah, I hear people paying $3 for a tomato in the States right now. So this is about $1 a pound. You can see, very fresh. But it's everything here. Strawberries look great. Cherries look great. Again, apricots. And when you see these things, I mean, you kind of have to get them now. Because once the season's over, I mean, really, you're not going to get them until next year. So take advantage of it. And people here do. You know, it's not like going to the store every day to pick up what you need. People wait until Tuesday, they stock up, and then that's what they cook. Of course, you have your staples, your potatoes, stuff like that. And this is going to get incredibly busy later. That's why we're here early, because I don't really want to catch people's faces, really. That's not the point. But the oranges here, the last time we went to Natfleon, we got 20 pounds of oranges for $5, growing in the Peloponnese. The best way I can describe it is, you remember how food used to taste when we were kids, younger, right? Before they really started dumping all the chemicals on stuff, before they really started using all the GMOs for everything. That's what it tastes like. And that's a good sign. But as you can see, I mean, it just keeps going all the way up the hill, right? It just keeps going and to the other side. And they have these all over the city and all over the country. And if I go to Turkey, they have it there too, because it's common, because this is how people shop, because this is how people have shopped for generations, for centuries, for millennia. You know, the grocery store is just one of the worst things that has really happened to America. The olives, let me tell you. It's always good to have a nice day out at the bazaar with my son. It feels good to get out there. Now let's have a real talk about food comparisons between the EU and the United States, because I think it's really important, and it really goes into the conversation that I want to pivot to next regarding Mexico and their trade agreement with the EU. Now, in America, generally, whenever you eat food, you're going to feel disgusting, gross. You feel like you need to go to a doctor that you can't actually afford to go to. You have no option. You're just going to sit there and feel the arrhythmia, feel the heart palpitations, and pray that you actually don't have to go to the doctor. But there's a reason for that. That's because your body is just constantly being attacked in the United States, right? we say that it's important to get organic food. And when we were living in the United States, when we had our son, his whole first year, we almost went broke importing our food from Europe because we didn't want our son to have all the chemicals in his body that are in all the even organic foods in the United States. Because the thing is, the default in the US is that your food is going to try to kill you. The default in the US is that your food is hyper processed, that it's genetically modified so that you can't stop eating it until you're diabetic, because then the pharmaceutical companies have you on the hook for the rest of your life for your insulin and your doctor treatments. And this is all about the difference in the approach to food in the United States, in Europe, in general. In the EU, a more sane way to look at this, and we'll look at Greece for example, right? There's a precautionary principle. And if something might be harmful, right, it's banned until it's proven safe. That makes sense, doesn't it? Well, that's not how it goes in the United States. In the United States, we have GRAS, is generally recognized as safe. And essentially what that means is it's safe until it becomes a PR scandal, a PR incident. Like I said earlier, the chemical warfare that your body's just always in the middle of. In the UK, in the EU, there's over 1,300 chemicals that have completely been banned from cosmetics and thousands from food. In America, there's fewer than 20 chemicals that have actually been banned because if it extends the shelf life of the slop, right, it's in. When you go to a local bazaar, like this one, like I said, there's different kinds of bazaars, right? There's different kind of markets. There's the ones that are geared for tourists. Those are the ones that you see usually once you come out of the metro station, a railway, something like that. No cherries, strawberries. Even if they're out of season, you'll never actually find them at the local market. They're going to be there because those are imported. And if they're not imported, if it is seasoned, then it's like the rejects. It's what they scoop out the bottom of the boxes. But in general, what you get at the markets, even what you get at the grocery stores, especially in a place like Greece, it's strict labeling, massive restrictions on your food. Most of the food is local, right? It's seasonal, and it's unengineered. GMOs aren't really a big deal in the EU, and especially when you're talking about some of the Scandinavian countries that have just outright, I believe Norway, GMOs aren't even allowed. Because like I said, it's the precautionary principle. If it might be harmful, it's banned, and that is just the safe approach. But in the United States, if there's a way to make a profit off of it, right, if we can double our yield, if we can make a tomato 5 times the size of Logan's head by manipulating its DNA and not knowing the consequences down the road, then fuck it, we're going to get more of a profit. That's the way to go. And you feel the difference, right? Like I said, ever since we came back to Europe, and this isn't my first time abroad, right? There's always that transition. Anyone who's actually left the country, it doesn't have to be Europe, it can be Mexico. Food standards in Mexico are much, much higher than they are in America. That's one of the reasons why there's compatibility when it comes to agricultural trade between the EU and Mexico. Because you're like, well, EU has all these restrictions, but Mexico, don't they just produce slop? No, they'll make the slop, but they don't sell it in Mexico. They've actively been trying to ban that, to remove the chemicals that America seems to be addicted to. So they'll still use those, I'm good, to blow up the yields, but at the same time, they're going to ship all that up towards the US for a premium. They'll give you the unhealthy stuff because they don't have a choice. Because when Mexico said, you know what, a couple years ago, when they said, you know what, these chemicals, they're really bad for you. They're bad for our people. We're not going to use these anymore. The US actually sued Mexico. It was like, no, we actually have contracts with Monsanto to use glyphosate. You need to keep using that. Shit like that, right? That kind of corruption in our agricultural system, in big agro, is just endemic. And it doesn't matter how unhealthy you are. It doesn't matter what it does to you. Like I said, there's no precautionary protocol when it comes to the food in the United States. So when you actually eat the food in the EU, guess how you feel? You feel energized. You feel like you're supposed to feel, which is you've just ingested food. Your body's breaking it down into calories, and your body's burning those calories to sustain movement, right? But in the United States, how do you feel? But if you go out to McDonald's, right? I can go up the street here. So what I would argue is the best souvlaki place in all of Greece. And that puts me in danger saying that. And I can get a massive gyro. And I can shove that thing into my face, and I can go walk 5 miles. We do that. We do that almost every day. Sometimes it's not souvlaki though, right? You can't do that every day. It's still got a little bit high sodium content, and I'm getting older. But in the United States, go to McDonald's, or not even that, eat the fruit, right? Eat whatever processed slop that you have, and what happens? You need to take a nap. You need to lay down because your body has gone into emergency defense mode against the red dye 40. When we're at a place like the bazaar that I just showed you, you have to remember that is hundreds of meters of fresh produce that you're walking through. That isn't just food, that is a strategic reserve. In Greece, Greek people work hard. The economy here isn't so great. Average person here makes about 1,000, 1,200 euros per month. And the cost of living here, if you are Greek, is really high. And so they need to work, and they do work. But the labor force here is fueled by real food. In the US, the labor force is being unpersoned by metabolic disease. That's why I say you pay for food twice in the United States. You pay for the food that you buy at the market, at the grocery store, whatever it is, and then you spend the same amount over the years on medical expenses that are caused by the same food that you just put on layaway. And when you do have a market like that that stretches hundreds of meters, what do you think that does to prices? When you have that kind of competition between vendors, they have to compete by lowering the prices as much as they can, right? It's not just one Kroger moves in and then over the years the local grocery store closes up, so now they have complete price control, right? They have price autonomy, price sovereignty over the entire region. You know, that's why 90% of people who live in America live within 10 minutes of Walmart. 10 minutes. Like, that's not competition. That's monopoly. You may look down on countries like this because they have these markets, but this is what it was always like. And that's why I can spend 20 euros at a market and feed my family fresh, chemical-free produce, get fresh bread, get fresh eggs, and that's enough to last us a week. And we'll go to a local butcher where the regulations are just as high for the meat, and we'll get meat as well. Of course, you don't eat as much meat here. They say that it's expensive, but if you actually break it down, it's actually still cheaper than it is in America and free of all the hormones that we have in the United States. Like I said, it's not just sunshine. You look at the sky behind me and you're like, oh, it's blue, it's beautiful, you know, you're living the dream life. Yes, I am living the dream life because I know that my son isn't going to be filled with these poisons. Because it's not just the sunshine, right? It's the lack of biological friction. In Greece, they treat food as a public utility for human health because that's exactly what it is. In America, we just use food as a delivery mechanism for corporate profit and medical dependency. I know I was leaving something out here, but I need to talk about the bakeries. Bread in America, there's a big joke that Europeans, when they come to America, they say, you don't have bread. And Americans are like, of course we have bread. You see, it's right there on the shelf. No, that's not bread, right? And how much do you pay for that bread in the United States? A good loaf of bread, right? Not Sara Lee's Honey Top, right? Not Wonder Bread, but like a good loaf of bread. You're talking about $6 to $8. You go to a bakery, $8 to $10. I will go to a bakery here in Athens, right, and pay €1. €1 for a beautiful loaf of bread that's still warm, a nice crackly crust. And again, it's not a luxury, right? It is a staple to society, to the population here, just as it's been a staple to every population in society since the agricultural revolution, essentially, right? Bread has built civilizations. The lack of bread has started revolutions. But what you have in the United States isn't bread, and you can't afford it, right? In Greece, if I go get a loaf of bread, it's flour, salt, water, and yeast. Maybe a little bit of olive oil to give it a little bit of flavor, right? If you're feeling fancy. In the United States, you have what? Let's look at it. Key ingredients: flour, high fructose corn syrup, soy lecithin, datum, calcium propionate, azotocarbonamide. That's a yoga mat chemical, if you didn't know. And you're like, well, our bread lasts a lot longer here. I only need one loaf of bread to last me a month. Yeah, that's not a good thing. The shelf life for bread is supposed to be 24 to 48 hours because it's real food. It dies because it was alive once. And that's the way you should look at your food. If you had your bread for 3 weeks, understand that it's probably made weeks before that. That's not bread, that's a mummy loaf. It doesn't rot because even the mold knows that there's no nutrition in it. And because there's bakeries everywhere here, there's a reason why it's €1, right? You're paying the baker for his labor and for the ingredients. You're paying for the baker and the grain. That's all you're paying for. You're paying $6 or $7 to $8 in the United States because you're paying for the marketing, you're paying for the plastic bag, you're paying for the 2,000-mile drive that actually took to get your Wonder Bread from Denver, Colorado to Detroit, Michigan. Like, that's not paying for good bread, even if you think that it's good bread because it's the more expensive bread. That's just the convenience fee that you're paying for your own slow poisoning. And the thing is, right, like most sane people, love carbs. Carbs are great. I love bread. We're a bread family. You know, we go through a loaf of fresh bakery bread every 2 days here. We do. Maybe once a day. That's fine. Right? We get a little olive oil dipping sauce. And again, we get sustained energy from it. We don't get brain fog. We don't get bloating. In the United States, I mean, even the bread at Subway, Europe doesn't even qualify that as bread because there's so much sugar in it. The bread in the United States gives you an insulin spike from the slop crash. It leaves you hungry and lethargic at the same time while your stomach's full. It's perfect for a captive workforce, right? It gives you just enough energy to make it to the end of the day where you have to go home and collapse. You can't focus on your hobbies. You know, you can't focus on becoming financially independent. Not only because you don't have the energy, but because you had to pay for the convenience fee to slowly poison yourself that has drained your bank account. We can actually go beyond this on just the fact that the food is poisoning you, your physical body, and say that the food in the United States has poisoned society as a whole. The fact that you don't have markets, the fact that you don't have bakers, the fact that you don't actually know where your food comes from. You have no idea what the supply chain actually looks like or how it works. You hope that the just-in-time logistics framework that the United States uses, it ain't gonna fail. But guess what? Things are breaking up in the world right now. The United States is losing its trade partners, and we're a country that depends purely on the global supply chain and global logistics to keep that slop on your table. Listen, you really want to save the United States, what you need to do is have society create a mirror agricultural economy, right? A shadow economy, a ghost economy, kind of like a black market trade, but for eggs, for cabbage. We need the soccer moms, the wide moms, the Xanax moms who developed their sourdough skills over the pandemic to actually sell their bread not for $10 to $12 a loaf, but for $1 or $2 a loaf. Let's be honest, this is the only way to really save society, is for the American population to become independent from big agriculture and from the food corporations. That's the only way to do it. Right? You look at companies like Nestle, Campbell's, they own absolutely everything, right? And that's what you choose because it costs 10 to 20 cents less, but it doesn't have to. And you know it's going to kill you. And like I said, it goes back to that entire ideology where the default is the poison food, right? The luxury is the food that's not going to kill you. The ideology needs to change, right? The processed food, the default food, that needs to become the food of desperation. The organic food, the regulations and restrictions need to come from the people and not the corporations and the government because they work hand in hand. We're getting a little bit off topic here, but that's fine, right? Because this is something that bothers me. Because like I said, I have a son and I don't want him, my wife doesn't want him to go back to America mainly because of the food. It's not even just the political chaos. It's the fact that when we come back to Europe or when we go to South America or Mexico or something like that, we immediately feel good. And we know that that's having an impact on our son, right? And when we look at the youth here in Greece and we see how healthy they are, we look at the youth in Turkey, we see how healthy they are. You know, when we're in the Netherlands, we look at all these fucking 6'5", 13-year-olds, and we're like, yeah, the food here tastes great. The food here is clean. Maybe these restrictions, maybe all these laws, maybe there's a reason behind it, and it's not just Davos trying to control your life, right? But tell me what you think, because I know there's a lot that goes into this, and I know there's a lot of people who make the cost of living videos. We really don't try to do that on the channel. Let's actually talk about the truth. Let's talk about the macroeconomics. Let's talk about the food supply chain. That's what we've done. I hope you learned something today. Food for thought as always. Logan says, what's up? It's windy as hell. I got to run. Have a good one.